it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to make a card, actually probably be making two cards with this stamp and die set. It's the Stephie doll 7 and it is the Stephanie doll in a bed. She has a cold pack on her head and she has a thermometer in her mouth. So I don't know if you can see that. It's so adorable. And she's pulling the covers up on her because she's obviously cold. Or I guess that could be a heating pad, I don't know. But you can have it whatever you want, right? Anyway, this is going to be sold on HSN. It is a Stamps of Life product and I want to make two cards with it. Let me quickly just tell you what these sentiments are. Get well soon, feel better soon, hang in there, sorry to hear you are under the weather. And then the dies, you have the shadow die and then the Stephie doll. You can paper piece that together. And then there is a word die, get well soon. So let's go ahead and get started with this card tutorial. For my first card, I'm going to be using the dies. And I'm actually going to be making a folded card. Those of you that are not familiar with a folded card, I'll just show you an example. I actually have one here. It's a card shaped like something and it's the card base. So here it's the mug and it's a mug shaped card, okay? And for this particular die, I'm gonna do the same thing. Now this is not a folded die. This is just the die to cut out these stamps. So this will cut out the stamp. So this die measures, let's see, it's about 3 7/8 inches tall. And then let's see, the widest side on here by 3 inches. So it's not the size of a actual A2 size, folded card that the Stamps of Life makes, but you can use it as one, right? So that's what we're gonna do today. It's gonna be a little bit smaller, but that's okay. It'll still fit in an A2 size envelope. And I thought this would be really cute. And you can actually be able to stand it up and then we'll use the get well soon on the inside of the card because that's gonna fit perfectly. So this card is gonna be all about die cutting and paper piecing. So I folded my cardstock in half and I'm gonna have this open from, let's see, I might have it open from the side. Since there is a flat edge here, it might make more sense to open it on the side. So we're gonna take our die and we're gonna position the die so that the cardstock is immediately to the right of that die. If you wanted to open it from the top, just place your die so that it's slightly above the cardstock. You know what? And I think I'm changing my mind. I'm just gonna go ahead and open it from the top. I think that'll be better. So we're gonna go ahead and tape this down and run that through the die cut machine. Now when that comes out of the die cut machine, we are going to go ahead and remove that die. So here's the card base and you can see how that's gonna stand up just like that. I think that's super cute. So now we're gonna take this die again. Instead of having the cardstock folded, I'm going to die cut just a regular piece of cardstock using that same layer because some of the top here is cut off and I want to make sure I get the whole thing in there. Let me remove this. So I'm going to go ahead and run that now through my die cut machine. So now what we have is the actual shadow layer cut out. So if you wanted just to die cut this and do paper piecing and put this flat on a card front, you can do that just by die cutting a single layer of that shadow layer. But this piece for our card is going to be the layering piece for the front because now you can see all the pieces that were cut off. Now we actually have a full card front, okay? So now we're gonna take this die and you can see by looking at the die, there's all these cut lines. So all these little pieces are gonna cut out. So her hair is gonna cut out, her face is gonna cut out, the blanket's gonna cut out, the bed is gonna cut out. There's gonna be so many little pieces which I'll be able to die cut with pattern paper and I'll be able to die cut with different color cardstock to piece them back in. I need to know where to place these pieces once I have them all die cut, because it might be really difficult to figure out where to do that. So I'm gonna use my Kiss Cut pad to do that. Now this card base, I'm just gonna set that aside for right now because I'm not gonna be using that. So I have my cutting plate from my die cut machine and I'm gonna place the shadow layer on that die cut plate or on the cutting plate. And I'm gonna place the die directly on top of that shadow layer. So next I'm going to just tape this down, and notice I'm actually taping it directly to the plate. And the reason for that is because I don't want this to move. I want to be able to get an impression of this die on my cardstock. So I'm just going to tape that down so that it stays in place. And then I'm going to use my Kiss Cut pad. This is a product designed by Stephanie Bernard at the Stamps of Life. And it's meant to be a replacement for your top cutting plate. And what happens is when this is run through the die cut machine, it's going to place an impression. It's not going to cut fully through that paper, but it's going to place an impression on that cardstock so that you'll be able to see the pieces of the puzzle. So let me go ahead and die cut this, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I already ran that through my machine. Now I'm just going to remove this tape and remove the die, and I want you to notice, hopefully you guys can see this, if I get it at a good angle, you might be able to see those lines in there. So it actually took the lines from the die and it kind of like engraved them, I want to say, into the cardstock so that you can see where all the pieces go. So it didn't actually cut because that plate's not thick enough to be a cutting plate. So it just kind of put them in there, those lines in there, so that now I have an outline that I can follow. So now I'm going to take this die and I need to figure out what colors do I want on the front of this image. So what pattern papers do I want to use, what colors, and I need to die cut them using this die, and then I'll be able to piece everything in. So I'm going to pop in here with a voiceover real quick just to speed up this process. And you can see that I've die cut several different pieces of cardstock. So here I'm cutting apart some of that die cut piece. This is the gray cardstock that I'm using, and I'm cutting away the actual bed portion of it, like the stands on the beds, the footboard, and the headboard portion. And that's what I'm going to use for the gray, and then just ink up the edges, and then I'm going to take that and then I'm just going to piece it on to that white shadow layer. And when I piece those pieces on there, I'm making sure that I'm putting it within the lines of that, where that Kiss Cut pad left those engraved lines in that shadow layer. So it's like I'm just filling in the pieces of the puzzle. So here I die cut another layer out of this pattern paper, and I'm cutting apart the pieces that I want to use for the pattern paper, which is going to be her blanket. So I'm just cutting away at where the lines in the cardstock are semi-cut, and just finishing up those cut lines with my scissors and just trimming away the excess. And I'm not even going to bother saving any of these excess pieces because they're so small and I just don't want to bother with that. So I'm just going to throw away the portions that I'm not using. And once I have her covers or her blanket cut out, I'm going to set that aside and move on to the next piece. So this next piece that I cut out is out of the vanilla cardstock from the Stamps of Life. And my initial intention was to use this vanilla cardstock for her face. But after I cut her face out and started, placing it to put the pieces together, I thought to myself, this vanilla cardstock is awfully light. I don't know that I want to go with the vanilla for her face. So I just leave it there for the moment and I move on. I cut another layer out of the chocolate, which is the brown cardstock. It's the dark brown from the Stamps of Life, and I'm going to use this portion for her hair. So I'm cutting around the pieces for her hair. And after I placed her hair there around her face, that's when it really hit me, and I said, no, there's no way that I can use the vanilla for her face. It's way too light. So I have another piece of ginger snap cardstock, which I cut out the same thing. And here is where I'm going to cut her face out, and I'm going to replace her face with the ginger snap and just give her a little bit darker skin. I think that looks so much better. But I'm still going to save that vanilla piece because I am going to use the vanilla piece for the thermometer, which I've already cut out. It's actually, I see it there laying on the table, and I'll be able to piece that back in. So here I'm just finishing out the die cutting. Some of the pieces there around by her neck, they get a little bit small, but you just have to be patient and take your time with just trying to cut all the little pieces out. And here I'm just inking up some of the edges just to add some added dimension to her sheets. So I put glue on the back of that and add those to that layer, and you can see some of the small pieces that you have to put back into here. So I'm just zooming this in a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. I'm adding her hair. I think once you have that bed frame down, that's the biggest part of the puzzle. So start with the bed frame like I did and make sure that you put it within the lines that the Kiss Cup pad had there on the cardstock for you, and then you'll be able to fit everything else in there much easier. So here I have the pattern paper that I cut that little coal pack out of, and I did put some ink on the edges of that and added that there to the top of her head. I am inking up the ginger snap paper for her skin, just putting some ginger snap ink on the edges of that. So the ginger snap piece that I put in underneath her neck, part of that is her shirt and her hands that are holding on to the covers. So I took a piece of I think this is the ocean cardstock, and I just die cut it, and I just used my scissors, and it's a very small piece that I had to cut apart, and I'm just gonna place it kind of on top there of that large piece. So you can see that entire piece. It's her neck, her hands, and her shirt. So I'm just placing that little teal piece right on top of it so that a little bit of her neck displays above it, and then her hands display on the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and add this entire piece down. And then I realized that I cut one of her fingers off. You see that little white spot right there on the right hand side. So I add some glue to the white portion, and then I just add her finger back in. If that's not paper piecing, I don't know what is. And then I go ahead and take that piece of ocean cardstock that I cut off for her shirt, and I just add that right on top. I just found it was easier just to add it on top of that entire ginger snap piece rather than cutting the hands off and then putting the shirt piece and trying to put the neck in. That just would have been too much for me to handle. So here I'm adding the rest of the pieces of her hair to fill in those white gaps. And I probably should have did her shirt in a different color. I have it the same color as the pillow that she's resting on. And then here I'm just plugging in some glue on the eyes and then putting in these little pieces for the eyes. I did put her thermometer in her mouth. That again is the vanilla cardstock. So you can see how this is coming together. And I do use my Copic marker for the cheeks and give her some rosy cheeks, and I die cut the Get Well Soon and put that on the inside. And then I'm going to add that entire layer to the front of the card base that we previously cut out. And if you wanted to, you can actually stamp a sentiment on the front of the bed. So what I love about doing a card like this and making the actual Stephie doll the actual card base and having her be a stand-up card like she is that if you were sending this to a person in the hospital, they can actually stand this up and put it on their table and have that card to look at. And that completes that first card. And for my second card, I'm going to be doing some stamping. So I'm going to use the stamp. I did stamp this out onto some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth cardstock with my Spectrum Noir alcohol proof ink. And I'm using my Copic markers to color this up. So I am going to go ahead and let you watch the coloring. And I'm going to set this to music, and then I'll come back and then I'll explain the rest of the card design for this second card. And if you're interested in knowing the colors that I'm using for the coloring of this card, I will have all of those linked down below. So I finished up my coloring and now I'm going to be putting the card together. I am using the window to stamp die set from the Stamps of Life, which I did die cut the windows and as well as the drapes. So some of the extras in the windows set, so you have the window to stamp dies and the extra for window dies. And I'm just inking up. I did die cut those out of the poppy cardstock, and I'm just inking them up with the poppy ink just to add some dimension to those drapes. I have that swirl, looks like a border die there on the table. That came from one of the card kits. I am going to be using that. So here's where I'm just putting together the window, the actual window frame. So I did cut a piece of the Blue Jay cardstock to fit the back portion of that window, and now I'm just adding the white cardstock frame, the window frame, to that Blue Jay cardstock, and then I'll be adding the drapes to the sides of that. So if you're interested in seeing more about this window die set, I do have a whole video. I actually have a couple videos on this set when it came out. I have the card kit video where I used this window die a lot, as well as when the club set came out, and I can link those below in case you're interested in seeing some more of this in depth. So I'm bringing in this loopy border, and I want it to look like or resemble carpet. So I'm putting it there at the bottom of that layer, and that polka dot layer, that one is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm just adding that border down to at the bottom, and then I'm going to build my scene from there. So I'm going to have the window, and that's going to be positioned there off to the right, and then I'm going to have the Stephie doll there off to the left a little bit, but I'm going to have her legs, the legs of the bed a little bit tucked into behind the carpet. I'm also using this stamp, and I am cutting the stamp because I wanted it to fit inside of that bed. So I stamped the words "Feel Better" right inside of the bed. The entire stamp actually said "Feel Better Soon," and I probably could have just masked off the word "soon," but I just cut the stamp and then just put it in there. So here I'm putting that on a white A2 size card base, and notice I also put that cat in the scene, and that cat is part of the window to stamp dies, but that particular cat that I used is part of the paper pad that went with that card kit that month. So here are both of my cards. If you like this video, give me a like and be sure to subscribe for more card making tutorials. Don't forget that these products will be on HSN, so if you like these products, head on over to the HSN website and take a look at that. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.